Ladies and gentlemen, stop for a moment and listen carefully, because not every message arrives through words, and not every warning comes with a loud voice. Sometimes the most urgent message in your life comes quietly, almost like a whisper, almost like a tremor in the soul. It comes when you are least expecting it. It comes when your guard is down. It comes in the middle of your ordinary day, and suddenly, everything feels different. Suddenly, the air feels heavier. Suddenly, the heart beats in a strange way. Suddenly, you know that something important is trying to reach you. And tonight, I want to speak to you about that kind of message. I want to speak to you about the message from your person, the one you thought was silent, the one you thought was too far away, the one you thought had moved on, disappeared, or chosen a different path. But deep inside, the connection never fully died. It never truly vanished. It remained alive in memory, in emotion, in the invisible language of the soul. And now at this moment, there is something urgent trying to come through. Ladies and gentlemen, Carl Jung taught us that the human being is never as simple as the mask they wear. The conscious mind may say one thing, but the unconscious mind is always speaking another language. We tell ourselves stories, we pretend we are fine, we act as if we have let go, we smile when we are hurting, we stay busy when we are lonely, we stay silent when our heart is screaming. But the unconscious remembers what the conscious mind tries to forget. It remembers the voice, it remembers the touch, it remembers the unfinished conversation, it remembers the promise, it remembers the pain, it remembers the love. And that is why some messages do not come when we want them. They come when we need them. Maybe you have been wondering why this person has been on your mind so strongly lately. Maybe you have been feeling a strange pull, an emotional disturbance, a sense that something is about to happen. Maybe you keep seeing signs, hearing songs, remembering moments, and feeling a presence that you cannot explain. Maybe you wake up with a heavy heart and no logical reason for it. Maybe you feel that someone is trying to reach you, not through the phone, not through the door, but through the deeper layers of your being. That is not imagination alone. That is not weakness. That is not nonsense. Sometimes the psyche knows before the eyes know. Sometimes the soul receives the signal before the body understands it. Sometimes the energy between two people becomes so intense, so unresolved, so emotionally charged, that even silence carries information. Even distance carries meaning. Even absence becomes a form of communication. And if you are hearing this today, maybe this message is for you. The first truth is this. When someone becomes urgent in your energy, it often means they are carrying something they can no longer hold inside. It could be guilt, it could be regret, it could be longing. It could be truth. It could be a confession they delayed too long. It could be the realization that they lost something rare. It could be the fear of losing you forever. Sometimes a person only understands the value of a connection after life has shown them what emptiness feels like without it. They may not have the courage to say it openly, but their soul knows. Their mind may resist, but their heart remembers. Their ego may fight, but their deeper self is restless, and that inner restlessness is often what creates the urgency. Think about how often human beings delay the truth. We delay apologies. We delay love. We delay vulnerability. We delay the message that could heal everything. We wait until the moment is almost gone. We wait until the person is walking away. We wait until the pain becomes louder than pride. We wait until our silence turns into regret. Carl Jung would say that what is not made conscious appears in fate. In other words, the truth we ignore does not disappear. It returns as pressure, as tension, as emotional crisis, as an urgent need to speak. That is why some people suddenly feel compelled to reach out after long silence. Something inside them can no longer remain hidden. Now let me speak to the heart of this message. The message from your person is not random. It is not casual. It is not ordinary. It carries emotional weight. It carries unfinished energy. It carries the kind of intensity that comes when someone has been thinking for too long and feeling for too deeply. It carries the kind of truth that was postponed, denied, or buried under fear. And now it is rising. Maybe they are realizing that life is too short to keep pretending. Maybe they are realizing that love left unspoken becomes pain. Maybe they are realizing that the distance between two hearts can become unbearable when one of them finally wakes up. Maybe they are realizing that you were never just a passing chapter. You were a psychological imprint. You were a symbol. You were a mirror. You were a feeling that entered their inner world and refused to leave. That is the power of deep connection. It does not only touch the surface, it enters the shadow, it enters the hidden place, it enters the part of the person they do not show to others. And once it enters there, it stays. Even if they move away, even if they distract themselves, even if they tell the world they are okay, the deeper self continues to respond. Ladies and gentlemen, this is where the urgency becomes meaningful. The urgent message is not only about words, it is about timing. It is about the soul reaching a point where it can no longer remain in hiding. It is about emotions demanding recognition. It is about the inner world pushing itself into the outer world. It is about a person finally feeling the cost of what was left unsaid. Maybe they miss you. Not in a simple way, not in a shallow way, but in a way that sits in the chest and does not leave. Maybe they have been trying to be strong, but strength has become exhaustion. Maybe they have been trying to stay detached, but detachment has become emptiness. Maybe they have been trying to move on, but moving on has only shown them that the bond was deeper than they admitted. Maybe they have been trying to forget, but forgetting has failed, because the memory is not in the mind alone. It is in the emotional body. This is why the message feels urgent. The soul knows when time is limited. The heart knows when something valuable is slipping away. The unconscious knows when the moment for honesty is narrowing, and once that recognition arrives, it can no longer be contained. It breaks through as urgency. It breaks through as dreams. It breaks through as signs. It breaks through as a sudden need to speak, to confess, to reach, to return. And maybe that is exactly what is happening now. Ladies and gentlemen, let us not underestimate how powerful silence can be. Silence is not always peace. Sometimes silence is pressure. Sometimes silence is fear. Sometimes silence is the battlefield where love and pride fight each other. Sometimes silence is the space where a person rehearses what they should say, but never says it. Sometimes silence is the prison they built for themselves. A person can be deeply moved and still remain silent. They can be overwhelmed and still remain distant. They can be full of love and still act cold. That is one of the great paradoxes of human nature. We assume emotions always express themselves clearly, but often they do not. Often the strongest emotions hide behind the most controlled behavior. The more intense the feeling, the more carefully some people try to manage it. Yet the body gives them away, the energy gives them away, the mood gives them away, the timing gives them away. Their sudden appearance, their unusual quietness, their indirect attention, their emotional hesitation, their curiosity from a distance, their need to know without asking directly, all of it says something. And you may already be sensing it. You may feel that someone has been circling around your energy, not fully present, but not fully absent either. They may not have sent the direct message yet, but the message is already forming. They may not have typed the words yet, but the truth is already alive inside them. They may be struggling with how to begin, because beginnings require courage. And courage is often the very thing people lack when the heart is at stake. Carl Jung understood that the human personality is layered. There is the persona, the face we show the world. There is the shadow, the parts we hide. There is the anima and animus, the inner feminine and masculine principles that shape how we relate. There is the self, the deeper center that seeks wholeness. When a relationship touches these layers, it is never just about attraction. It becomes psychological, spiritual, and transformational. That is why certain people disturb us so deeply. They awaken what was asleep. They expose what was buried. They challenge the false peace we built around ourselves. Sometimes a person enters our life not merely to stay, but to reveal. They reveal our needs. They reveal our wounds. They reveal our attachment. They reveal our fear of abandonment. They reveal our fear of intimacy. They reveal the longing we did not know we carried. And when they leave, or when the connection becomes complicated, the psyche continues to process what happened. That processing can take time. It can take tears. It can take nights of silence. It can take years, but the soul keeps working. And this is why the message can arrive much later than expected. Because emotional truth often arrives late. A person may only realize your value after they have felt your absence. They may only realize your importance after their own life becomes quiet without you. They may only realize how much they depended on your presence when they no longer have access to it. And in that realization, urgency is born. They may suddenly feel the need to tell you what was once impossible to tell. They may suddenly feel the need to admit what they denied. They may suddenly feel the need to come clean, to return, to explain, to ask, to heal. This is not always neat. It is not always elegant. Human beings are messy when it comes to love. We are rarely brave at the right time. We are often brave too late. But late bravery is still bravery. Late truth is still truth. Late confession still carries power if the heart is sincere. Now, let us go deeper. The reason this message matters is because it represents a threshold. A threshold is the place between what was and what will be. It is the doorway between denial and awareness, between separation and reunion, between silence and speech, between fear and honesty. A threshold is a dangerous place for the ego because it demands change. It demands that we step out of familiar suffering and into uncertain truth. And many people do everything they can to avoid thresholds. They stay in the known pain because at least it is familiar. They stay in the old story because at least it protects them from vulnerability. They stay in silence because at least it saves their pride. But deep down, the psyche cannot remain in a threshold forever. Eventually it pushes. Eventually it insists. Eventually it says, enough. Enough pretending, enough waiting, enough hiding, enough denying what is real. That is why an urgent message can feel like destiny. Not because destiny is magical in the childish sense, but because there are moments when the inner and outer worlds align in a way that forces a decision. Your heart cannot ignore it. Your mind cannot reduce it. Your body cannot dismiss it. Something has shifted, and now the truth wants a voice. Maybe that truth is, I miss you. Maybe that truth is, I never stop thinking about you. Maybe that truth is, I was wrong. Maybe that truth is, I should have told you sooner. Maybe that truth is, I am not as okay as I appeared. Maybe that truth is, you mattered more than I knew how to say. Maybe that truth is, I am afraid I have lost you. Each of these carries urgency. Each of these contains a wound. Each of these is a doorway to a deeper revelation. And if this is your message today, then understand that the heart behind it is not always trying to manipulate. Sometimes it is simply trying to survive its own honesty. Sometimes the message arrives because the inner conflict has become too strong. The person is torn between what they feel and what they have done, between what they want and what they fear, between pride and love, between the persona and the soul. That inner conflict can produce a very specific energy. It feels heavy. It feels restless. It feels like unfinished business. It feels like there is something hanging in the air. And there is. The unspoken becomes a presence. The avoided becomes a weight. The denied becomes a call. Carl Jung would likely tell us that if something keeps returning, it is asking to be integrated. That means the pattern is not there to punish us only, but to teach us. The repeated thought, the repeated memory, the repeated dream, the repeated pull toward someone, all of it can point to an unresolved part of the self. Sometimes the person we cannot stop thinking about is not only a person, they are also a symbol of our own unfinished emotional story. They represent the part of us that still longs, still hopes, still fears, still loves. So when you feel this urgency, ask yourself not only, what are they feeling, but also, what is this revealing within me? What part of your heart is being awakened? What old wound is being pressed? What hope is being revived? What truth are you being asked to face? Because sometimes the message from your person is also a message to you. It may be telling you to stop ignoring your intuition. It may be telling you to stop settling for shallow connection. It may be telling you to honor what your heart has known for a long time. It may be telling you that love, when real, changes the architecture of the soul. It may be telling you that some bonds are not random at all. They are encounters that leave fingerprints on the psyche. And once the psyche has been marked, it does not forget easily. That is why a simple message, a single line, a sudden call, a brief confession, can shake someone to the core. Because it does not arrive alone. It arrives with memory. It arrives with feeling. It arrives with all the earlier moments that were never properly resolved. One message can open a floodgate. One sentence can bring down a wall. One admission can expose years of emotional history. That is the power of urgency. But listen carefully. Urgency also reveals character. When a person finally speaks, how they speak matters. Do they speak with honesty or with performance? Do they speak to heal or only to soothe their own guilt? Do they speak to reconnect or only to gain access? Do they speak with responsibility or only with sentiment? The soul can sense the difference. And this is important. Not every urgent message deserves immediate surrender. Not every sudden return is a true return. Not every apology is transformation. Not every confession is change. Carl Jung taught us to see beneath the surface, not to worship the surface. So yes, the message may be real, the feeling may be real, the longing may be real, but real emotion alone is not enough. True alignment requires truth, consistency, and courage. So if your person reaches out, listen not only to the words, but to the energy behind them. Listen not only to what is said, but to what is being admitted through tone, timing, and action. A heart can speak beautifully and still be unready. A person can sound sincere and still be incomplete. Healing requires more than dramatic expression. It requires consciousness. And consciousness is the great challenge of love. Because love without consciousness becomes projection. We imagine what we want to see, we hope, we fill the gaps, we become attached to possibilities. But when consciousness enters, we begin to see the actual human being in front of us, not the fantasy, not the fear, not the ideal. We see their limitations, we see their wounds, we see their responsibility, we see whether they are capable of meeting us in truth. That is why an urgent message can be both beautiful and dangerous. Beautiful, because it may finally reveal what was hidden. Dangerous, because it may tempt the heart to rush into old patterns. So the wise soul receives the message with openness and discernment. It does not slam the door before hearing. It does not surrender its peace before seeing consistency. It does not confuse emotional intensity with emotional maturity. Ladies and gentlemen, perhaps this is the real lesson hidden inside the title tonight. The title says, I have one message from your person and it's urgent. But beneath that is a deeper truth. The heart is always receiving messages. The soul is always listening. The unconscious is always active. We are not as disconnected as we think. We are not as indifferent as we pretend. We are not as finished as we hope. The human bond leaves traces. Love leaves traces. Regret leaves traces. Unspoken truth leaves traces. And those traces eventually demand attention. So what should you do when the urgent message comes? First, do not panic. A strong message can shake the nervous system. It can bring excitement, fear, hope, and confusion all at once. Breathe. Let the first wave pass. Let your emotions settle enough for you to hear clearly. Not every strong feeling is a clear guide. Sometimes the strongest feeling is just the oldest wound getting touched. Second, do not rush to define the entire future from one moment. A message is a beginning, not a conclusion. A beginning can be important, but it is not the whole story. Do not let one text decide your destiny. Let patterns reveal themselves. Let time tell the truth. Let action confirm what words only promise. Third, listen to what your inner self is saying. Do you feel calm, honored, and safe? Or do you feel anxious, confused, and pulled into the same cycle? Your inner response matters. Carl Jung would say the psyche often knows the truth before the ego can accept it. Pay attention to what your body says. Pay attention to whether your peace expands or contracts. Fourth, remember your worth. An urgent message does not reduce your value. It does not erase your boundaries. It does not mean you must accept whatever comes. You are not a waiting room for someone else's emotional crisis. You are a whole human being. If someone returns, they must return with truth, respect, and responsibility. Love cannot be rebuilt on convenience. Fifth, be willing to hear the truth, even if it is imperfect. Sometimes the message is not the romantic return we imagined. Sometimes it is closure. Sometimes it is accountability. Sometimes it is a test of whether we can finally stop clinging to a fantasy. Sometimes the urgent message is not, "Come back to me," but, "You needed to know this so you can move forward with clarity." Even that can be healing. Now let me speak to those whose hearts are tired. Maybe you are exhausted from waiting. Maybe you have been carrying hope for too long. Maybe you have been reading signs and questioning yourself. Maybe you have been holding a love that has no visible shape. If that is you, listen closely. Your sensitivity is not your weakness. Your capacity to feel deeply is not a curse. Your longing does not make you foolish, it makes you human. But human feeling must eventually meet wisdom. A deep heart is a gift, but it needs guidance. Otherwise it becomes vulnerable to fantasy, repetition, and emotional dependency. Jung never encouraged us to suppress the soul. He encouraged us to understand it, to make the unconscious conscious, to stop being ruled by what we do not face. That is the path of inner maturity. So perhaps this urgent message is also an invitation to maturity. Maybe it is saying, stop abandoning yourself while waiting for someone else to choose you. Maybe it is saying, stop romanticizing confusion when your soul is asking for clarity. Maybe it is saying, stop calling pain destiny when it is really unresolved attachment. Maybe it is saying, stop shrinking your own life for a person who has not yet shown up fully. Maybe it is saying, your heart deserves truth, not just intensity. These are hard truths, but they are loving truths. And if the person in question truly is reaching out, then let them meet you in honesty. Let them show, not just tell. Let them prove that the urgency is more than a passing emotion. Let them understand that your trust is not something to be taken lightly. Let them know that a real connection must be handled with reverence. Because when love is real, it does not just create excitement. It creates responsibility. It asks the person to become someone worthy of the bond they claim to feel. It asks them to face their shadow. It asks them to stop hiding behind excuses. It asks them to stop delaying truth. It asks them to grow. and growth is never cheap. It asks for ego death. It asks for humility. It asks for discomfort. It asks for honesty that may hurt before it heals. Yet only through that process can a relationship move from fantasy into reality, from projection into presence, from longing into lived truth. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to remind you of something beautiful and powerful. The heart is not foolish for hoping. The heart is brave for hoping. But hope must be guided by awareness. Hope without awareness becomes suffering. Hope with awareness becomes wisdom. So when the message arrives, or if you already feel it arriving, stand still for a moment and ask, what is this really? Is it a genuine awakening? Is it regret? Is it loneliness? Is it fear of loss? Is it a desire to reconnect or a desire to be relieved of guilt? The answer matters. Carl Jung's work is powerful here because it teaches us that the outer event is only half of reality. The inner meaning matters just as much. The same message can mean different things to different hearts. To one person it may be closure, to another it may be a beginning, to another it may be a warning, to another it may be the moment they finally stop lying to themselves. And that is why interpretation must be grounded in self-knowledge. The more you know your own patterns, the less likely you are to be lost in someone else's. The more you understand your own wounds, the less likely you are to confuse intensity with intimacy. The more you honor your inner life, the easier it becomes to recognize whether a person's urgency is sincere or reactive, loving or fearful, conscious or unconscious. Still, do not close your heart. There is wisdom in boundaries, but there is also wisdom in openness. Do not become so guarded that you miss the truth when it comes. Sometimes the heart that hurt you is also the heart that has awakened. Sometimes the person who was silent is now ready to speak. Sometimes the moment that once felt impossible becomes the moment of transformation. Life is strange like that. The soul is strange like that. We spend so long assuming that things are final, only to discover that inner change can occur unexpectedly. A person can undergo a quiet revolution. They can wake up one morning and finally see what they could not see before. They can suddenly understand the cost of their avoidance. They can suddenly feel the weight of their absence. They can suddenly realize that some connections are not replaceable. And when that realization happens, urgency follows. If the message reaches you, receive it with both heart and mind. Let the heart feel, let the mind observe, let the spirit discern. This is the Jungian path, the path of wholeness. Not denial, not obsession, not blind hope. Wholeness, the integration of feeling, thought, intuition, and reality. Because the goal is not merely to know whether someone misses you. The goal is to know what this reveals about your life, your patterns, your boundaries, your worth, and your next step. Maybe the urgent message is an invitation to reconnect. Maybe it is an invitation to forgive. Maybe it is an invitation to release. Maybe it is an invitation to finally tell the truth yourself. Maybe it is an invitation to choose a better path than the one that wounded you before. Whatever it is, do not waste the moment. Moments like this are rare. They are emotionally charged. They are meaningful. They arrive because something inside the human story has reached its breaking point or its breakthrough point, and often those two are close to each other. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to end this with one final thought, and I want it to stay with you long after the words are gone. The urgent message from your person may not just be about them. It may be about the part of you that still believes in truth. It may be about the part of you that still wants to heal. It may be about the part of you that still hopes for love without lies. It may be about the part of you that is no longer willing to live in confusion. It may be about the part of you that is ready to meet reality with open eyes and an open heart. And that, in the deepest sense, is the real message. Because when someone reaches out from the hidden places of their soul, they are not only speaking to you, they are speaking into the mirror of their own unconscious. They are trying to reclaim what was lost, what was denied, what was feared, what was left unfinished. Their urgency is a sign that the inner world can no longer remain silent. So listen carefully, receive with wisdom, feel with courage, and never forget that the heart, when awakened, always seeks the truth. Ladies and gentlemen, if a message is coming, let it come. If truth is arriving, let it arrive. If a soul is finally ready to speak, let it speak. But whatever comes, remain rooted in your own dignity, your own peace, and your own self-respect. Because the most important love story is not only the one between you and your person, it is the one between you and your own soul. And when that soul is strong, clear, and awake, no urgent message can ever steal your center again.